What is going on, people? This is the JT Sports Show, episode 36. We are back. Jackson Borst is here. We're going to talk about the Timberwolves because last night they beat the Hawks, and within the coming week to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we do not know when, but All-NBA player Karl Anthony Towns will be back in a Timberwolves uniform playing for the first time since the end of November, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a lot to talk about with Cat because, let's be honest, it wasn't very good to start the year. But he is an All-NBA player, and we have a different roster right now than we had back then. It's more suitable, in my opinion, to what Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert do with the addition of Mike Conley and subtraction of D'Angelo Russell. So, Borsty, we are going to talk about Cat, some positives and negatives surrounding his comeback, but your overall thoughts on where the team lies right now ahead of a big game tomorrow against Boston at home, and then another road trip with some winnable but losable games at the same time.
Yeah. So 35-34, really good win last night. I think that was one of the best wins of the season, and that's not recency bias. I really believe that. Yeah, you said it. Really tough. Well, not really tough, but a really unfortunate game on Wednesday, having to play the Celtics. They're coming off of a loss. That sucks. I'm not expecting a win, and you need to pick up wins right now with the standings. If we want to get 6, if we want to avoid the plan, we need to pick up wins. But I really like our schedule other than the Celtics game. I think that these are 3 very winnable games. Well, actually 4 very winnable games. We got Toronto, Chicago, New York, and Atlanta. That's 4 in a row. I think you should go. I think we can go 3-1 in that stretch, maybe 4-0. But yeah, I think it's time that we get Cat back. We need to see what this thing looks like. Finch said it for next year. We need to see what it looks like for next year to see if this thing can work. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm anxious to see it. So
for a long time, I felt like this team had no identity without Cat, and it was just D'Lo and Ant basically running the show. But the last couple of weeks, especially on that road trip, I feel like this team has formed a defensive identity, and that's how they're going to win games, especially right now. Now, when Cat comes back, it's probably going to be more of the offensive end because I don't know how much we're going to be able to rely on Cat chasing around 4s and teams trying to spread us out if we make it to the playoffs. But right now, with the way Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels are playing defense, and hell, Mike Conley, he's a good defender. He can stay in front of guys, and he's smart. He doesn't lose guys like Anthony Edwards can or D'Angelo Russell used to.
Draws offensive fouls. That's a nice thing about Mike.
That's true. He loves drawing those moving screens now out near the top of the key. But yeah, defensively, I think before the other night, we were 8th in the league in defensive rating. Like, he just hasn't felt that way. But recently, late in games, I feel like we have been able to rely on Anthony Edwards, especially. And Jaden McDaniels is usually pretty solid the whole game. And Rudy Gobert, on both sides of the ball, especially since Mike Conley has come, has been a different player. He has a pep in his step. Beginning of last night was kind of weird. I don't know. He looked kind of slow. Maybe it's because of his injury that he was questionable about. But for the most part, he has been exceptional. He's just as efficient this entire year, statistically, as efficient offensively as he was last year with Utah. It's his defense that was sort of taking a back seat, but I think recently his defense has taken another step forward. And so, yeah, when you have Ant, Jaden, and him, and Mike Conley, and hell, Kyle Anderson, man, he's slow, but he is smart. He can
triple-double last night.
He can outsmart opposing teams on the defensive end. The offensive end, I never have worries. I know you do at times. But let's talk about Cat, because this is a big thing. When he does return, there's a lot of question marks. But I put you to a homework assignment to think about 3 positives and 3 negatives. Some obvious, some under the radar. One by one, you can start with positives or negatives. Just say one. I'll react. We can talk about them.
I'll start with the positives.
Mm-hmm. Just go one.
Yeah. Number one, much needed 3-point shooting will be back.
Yes. It has been an issue. Besides like a couple of games. The Kings game. Last night we were pretty solid except for Ant.
Except for the last two of the game.
Yeah.
Two in a row.
Of course he makes those, but I don't know if I consider the spacing, if the spacing is going to be better, just because he is a big person. But if they use him in the right way, the spacing can be effective, whether it's just him chilling in the corner or the top of the key. I think it's all based on how they use him in terms of spacing. But the 3-point shooting, he only shot 30%. His numbers say 30% right now. Mm-hmm. But I expect that to.
It was 32. It was 32.
Chris Hine was on Dane's podcast saying that the part of the practice that the media were allowed into yesterday, Cat was chilling in the corner shooting threes. So maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, for sure. Number two, I have another scoring option to have when the bench comes in, or when Ant is on the bench.
Sorry, repeat that. I was looking at something.
I said another scoring option to have when the bench comes in. So, like the role that Nas has right now, or when Ant is on the bench with the other starters.
Yeah. Part of that, I think it'll be interesting to see if he starts on the bench. Sorry, somebody in the room here. Whether he starts on the bench. Remember 2 years ago when D'Lo came back from the injury, right when Finch was hired, and D'Lo started on the bench, and he was really effective. He brought a big punch to that the bench scoring. Mm-hmm. I'm very curious to see if Cat starts on the bench. I hope he does, because the starting lineup as of late has been clicking, and if you can bring that firepower off the bench, Nas has been great, but Cat is much better than Nasri. Let's be honest here, and it's we've talked about this. The amount they can stagger Rudy and Cat, and the amount they can stagger Ant and Cat. I don't know how they're going to do it, but if they can somehow find a way to do it and always have one of Cat and Ant on the court, it'll very much so help the bench, and it'll take pressure off of the Nikhils of the world and the Jordan McLaughlins of the world to have to put some points on the board.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, and then my third one is in crunch time, he will help space the floor and be a good option / take pressure off of Ant when he gets double teamed.
No doubt. I 100% agree. I have question marks. The other night, I was thinking about all this, so I went back and rewatched a couple of games regarding late game offense when Cat was on the team. And Ant had the ball a lot. So I'm not worried about that. Like when D'Lo was playing too, and Ant still had the ball a lot. Now he likes to make mistakes late game with the ball in his hands, but that's neither here nor there. Cat will help that because teams are still, they might do it less.
Respect him. They'll have to respect the shot.
I think they will. Lately, they've been doubling the hell out of him, trapping him, and Ant's not in the, how do I say this? He still likes to try and attack double teams, which at times can get him in trouble and make him shoot very difficult shots late game because he feels like he has to put the team on his back. But when he has when there's Cat on the court, the second best scorer is no longer Rudy Gobert or Mike Conley. It's Karl Anthony Towns. Some people would argue Cat's a better scorer than Ant right now. But Ant will have the ball in his hands, and it will relieve pressure off of him to have another scorer like Cat.
Yeah, now on to the negatives. And we'll get to it. Number one, it's just like a pretty obvious one, but number one is it looked horrible the first 21 games of the year. The fit with Rudy.
Yeah, well, I mean, those two actually meshed okay together. It was, and the offense, I keep reminding myself to go look back at what the offensive numbers were. I feel like they weren't that bad. It was the defense. And
I also went back and I looked at Ant's points per game and shot attempts per game. The first,
Now
20 games. So the first
put some
month of the
stock
season.
into the fact that he was fat.
Well, yeah, I guess, but I know what I was watching, and you do too. And it was
He
not.
was not engaged.
Yeah, it was not good.
That's not all. That's not all on in terms of Cat and Rudy and D'Lo. That's part of it. That is, and I wholeheartedly believe that was Anthony Edwards not being locked in.
Yeah, well, I hope that was the case. Like I said, I was not a fan of the shape that he came in. I've made that known. That was unprofessional and it was dumb. And let's hope he never does that again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I hope that that's the number one reason that all of it was so terrible to start. But who knows?
I think the positive in that is that Rudy and Cat did kind of work well together. And as bad as we think the defense was, it was all transition. Our half-court defense was very good, which is somewhat surprising. It was transition. You can look back at that Warriors game. It was hard to watch how much the Warriors were just running up and down on us, and we couldn't keep up with them. The Wizards game, when Cat got hurt, that was disgraceful. But if they can somehow figure out the transition,
5 more games from the first 20.
If they can figure out the transition defense in a way, that's the number one thing when he comes back.
Also, I think that having Mike Conley will hopefully improve the offense too from what it was early in the season. Having D'Lo, that was not the guy that you want at the point guard with the new fit and everything. So hopefully it'll, be much smoother with Mike.
Yeah. And I want listen, as much as we want Ant to have the ball a bunch, I want Cat to be aggressive shooting threes.
Yeah. Threes. Shoot all the threes. That is 100% fine with me.
Yeah.
I've been texting you. I don't want the low post nonsense. I don't want that because it's just going to clog the lanes and it's just not going to be good. And Cat won't be as good because Rudy will be down there too. So if he wants to do that when it's just the bench, which I don't know how often that'll happen where he's just out there at the bench, but like if we've kind of hit like a bump with scoring in a game where we just can't buy a bucket, sure, you can go to that and just get a bucket however they come. But that's not something I want to see. I want to see him outside that 3-point line, frankly, all the time. Number 2, well, I guess this was also part of the first one. I wrote it down. It was having to guard power forwards. We know how horrible that was to start, but you kind of already touched on it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't as bad as we thought, I guess, because our half-court defense was really good. And it was more so transition. And in that was cross-matching. Like every 2 out of 5 possessions, we'd miss a shot. And somehow Cat would be on a point guard on the defensive end just because they couldn't freaking match up defensively because they weren't getting back. So if they can figure that out, that'll be good.
I have, will it take away usage from Ant ? And I said after that, I don't think so. I ultimately don't think it will, but curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's less about Cat and more about D'Lo not being here. I think I've said that from day one. I think Cat has less to do with the Ant usage being down to start the year than D'Lo, because D'Lo wants his. And we've seen enough now of Mike Conley. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about scoring points. He gives the ball up to Ant all the time. And hell, I wouldn't even mind Mike Conley having the ball more in his hands because he makes the right play. And you could still find Ant late. Like, it's just Ant doesn't need to necessarily be the point guard. Like, start the possession with the ball. I'm fine with Mike finding.
Yeah, not all the time, but I definitely want to see it a lot.
No, I do. I'm just saying, and it's going to happen. He's going to have the ball plenty. But another thing, the Mavs do this a lot, and the Warriors do this a lot. I want to see when Ant gets doubled at the top of the key and Rudy's coming in for a screen. The Mavs do this with Luka when he gets doubled. The Warriors do this all the time, no matter who it is. The guy comes up to screen him. He gets the ball handler gets doubled. Rudy slips back into the middle of the floor. Ant throws it over the top, and Rudy can spray it to shooters around the court. Rudy's not a bad passer.
Like a bumper on a power play for hockey.
Sure.
You get it to the middle.
Yes.
Kicks it out.
It's sort of like when the Wolves face zone, you pass it into Kyle. and Kyle just finds shooters on the outside.
Hmm.
I want to see that because that's a way to get Ant off the ball, and then when he's getting doubled, and then Rudy can find open shooters. The Mavs do this all the freaking time, especially when they play the Wolves and the Wolves double them. They throw it down to Dwight Powell, kick out 3 Reggie Bullock, kick out 3 Tim Hardaway. If you could do that, and maybe Rudy finds Cat for a wide open 3, that's cash. That's what I want to see more of. I don't expect it necessarily, but I think it could be effective.
For sure. Back to dumb fouls and decision making.
Yeah, I think less dumb fouls will be made if he's more of a perimeter shooter and just less in the post. That's where he creates all of his dumb fouls on the offensive end, whether it's putting a shoulder into someone and them flopping and that's a charge, or doing the stupid like elbow hook around the person, the most obvious call of all time. He makes every offensive foul call so obvious. He can't get away with anything because it's so obvious, and he forces the refs to call these fouls on him. But I think if he's more of a perimeter shooter and chilling in the corner every once in a while, he won't get as many fouls.
Yeah.
Less post-ups.
Yeah. And my last one is taking dumb shots.
Are you talking about Cat or other guys?
Cat.
Yeah,
that's the last one on my list.
Does Cat really take that many dumb shots?
Well,
I feel like that's
think
never really
this more ties into the decision making, where when he gets an offensive rebound and he is obsessed with scoring it, and he doesn't like kick it out to wide open guys, like that's something that
it's hard to get mad at Cat for scoring things because he is very efficient. It hasn't been a huge issue in his career.
Yeah.
Ant takes way harder shots than Cat does.
Yeah.
And that's just part of being a guard and the way he has to score versus Cat can score in the post way easier than Ant. But I don't think that'll be a big issue.
Okay, good.
You done with your list?
Yeah, that's everything.
One thing I want to talk about is the elephant in the room here. What happens with Naz Reid? I am afraid that he is not going to get minutes. And if he does, there'll be sparingly, foul trouble, stuff like that. Maybe matchup wise, but just like he has never played well with Cat. His numbers aren't good with Rudy. And I don't see Cat and Rudy not being on the floor all that often. That's really the only way I see him on the floor because there's no reason to push Naz Reid onto the court just to get him minutes if Carl or Rudy are out there because they aren't good together. The only way it makes sense to play Naz is if both Cat and Rudy are off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's going to happen all that often, or at least I hope it doesn't, because I want one of them on the court at all times.
You do?
I want one of Cat or Rudy on the court at all times. I would prefer them to be staggered more than play all their minutes together. You disagree?
Yeah, but remember what happened last time when that was a thing?
Well, it'll make it easier to stagger Ant and Cat. I think, because you're going to play starters with starters more often than unless you really push into the Ant with the bench thing, which is pretty solid. And he gets really that he'll get that more so, I think, now. Because that happens late in quarters, like end of the first, the last like 3 or 4 minutes, he's always with the bench.
And end of the third.
Yeah. So I expect that to I hope, I guess you might not hope this, but that Cat and Rudy get staggered a decent amount.
Yeah. I mean,
just because we've seen go ahead.
Oh, okay. Ultimately, I think his minutes are going to get cut. I do not think he will be playing. Maybe with Cat's minutes restriction, he'll still be playing, but I don't see it. They're not going to take away Kyle Anderson's minutes more than they're going to because Kyle will be on the bench now, and they're not going to give those minutes to him, and they're not going to take away Rudy's. And once Cat's back, they're not going to take away his. So you pretty much said all of it, but I don't think he's going to get minutes anymore. And I mean, you feel bad for the guy. Yeah,
I think I don't foresee him unless we trade Cat this summer. I don't think, or Rudy, I guess. I don't think Nas is going to be on the team next year. I just don't see why it would make sense.
I'll tell you why. Go ahead. You keep going, then I'll tell you why it makes sense.
I think it makes zero sense. What's the point of having Cat, Rudy, and Nas unless you have the vision of trading one of the centers? Because you're going to have to pay a decent amount for him, and you can use that mid-level on a player that would actually play for you.
Tell you.
I mean, I guess he's a good insurance policy if one of those guys gets hurt. But, like, you can live with Luka Garza.
Because he's 22 or 23 years old, and he's come this far. What's to say that he can't come even farther than that? Who's to say that he can't be our starting center once we move on from Rudy and Cat?
So you're just wasting, let's say they don't move those guys for the rest of Rudy's contract. Let's just say that happens. You foresee Nas just being a sparingly playing center, third string center, and then all of a sudden being really good in 3 years?
I know that's a good argument, but I don't think they're gonna be the whole 3 years without trading one of the two.
I agree. Which
it sucks. I mean, it's like, well, that means that it probably didn't go well, which it's not fun to think about, but that might be what happens. But like I said, he's come this far. He's a great story, and he's had a heck of a season. He's been so good for us. I'm not saying he doesn't have his flaws, but I don't know. $10 million a year, $8 million a year. I think that's worth it for him. He deserves it, and I want him here. Well liked by teammates. Mm-hmm. Works well with Ant. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's going to be sad if they trade him. Or no, they can't trade him if he leaves in free agency.
I am currently predicting the rotation. The guys that will get minutes consistently say they make it to the playoffs. What do you think of this? 9-player rotation.
And that sometimes should be 8.
Right.
You play 8 guys in the playoffs. The best coaches, they play 8 guys in the playoffs.
Mike Conley, Ant, Jaden, Cat, Rudy.
5.
Kyle.
6.
TP.
7.
J-Mac and Nikhil.
That's 9. So who are you cutting in the playoffs?
Probably
J-Mac?
Possibly J-Mac. If you're comfortable playing like Kyle at the point guard.
I think J-Mac might.
Or Ant with the bench as the point guard.
Yeah.
Nikhil is just so versatile.
Well, and he can hit the threes. So I think in the playoffs, I don't even think they're going to do this. But if they were to just go 8 guys, which they should, I think J-Mac doesn't play. Because you said it. Kyle can play point guard, Ant can play point guard, and Nikhil can bring the ball up the floor.
It's obvious that J-Mac is the worst of those 4. He's clearly been a tier below those 4 as of late, especially since he's come back from his injury. It's just like he's a true point guard, and it's kind of nice to have a true point guard.
Yeah, it is, but the 3-point shooting hasn't been ideal.
No, well, it's never been. So that means the players that I would leave out are Rivers, Noel, Nas,
J-Mac.
And J-Mac would be the
9th,
I suppose. Do you have any problems with that? Or you play?
I don't have any problems with that. Because listen, I just got a really fun idea in my head about watching playoff basketball. And when that second unit comes in, how you're going to have Ant running point, you're going to have Kyle running point, and like I said, you can have Nikhil still dribble the ball up a little bit. And that's exciting to me. I'm not saying I don't love J-Mac. I do. He's really good at defense. He always makes the right play. But I think I really value 3-point shooting, and we're going to need it in those playoff games. And I'm not saying he can't hit them, but I don't know. Nikhil is really good at at hitting threes lately. So I don't know. We'll have to see, but that's what I would go with right now.
Yeah. Who would you consider to be an X factor? Like if he plays well, the team's probably going to play well. If he plays bad, it hurts.
Well, I mean, probably Jaden.
Yeah. I think Kyle.
I think Jaden or Rudy.
If you can get like a really good Torian Prince game, that's just like a huge bonus.
Yeah.
Like I've been pretty underwhelmed lately, to be honest.
He hasn't been great. He hasn't.
He hasn't been making his threes. He goes like 1 for 4 every night.
And that's not something I like to see because he's normally 40%. But that being said, Torian's a good defender, right?
Yeah.
And he can still hit shots. He's a good scorer. He can drive the hoop sometimes too. He can take it to the rim, and he's decent in the mid range. So I'm not really that worried. But I mean, you'd like to see him hit more shots going into the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just Kyle, when and we saw for about a week and a half stretch, he was just playing poorly. I told you, just got to keep playing him because he does strike me as a guy that when he has confidence, he makes those goofy shots. And when he has no confidence, he'll miss the easiest little bunnies.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like he's an all-around player. And sure,
I think it's a good thing that Cat's coming back because his minutes will go lower, and I think that might be good for him.
Yeah. He does. He's never played these type of minutes in his career, but Finchy just adores the man.
As evidenced more last night.
I think we should do a power rankings of players Chris Finch likes the most.
Let's do it right now.
All right.
I'll make my list.
All right. I'm going to make my list real quick. While we make this list, the Vikings are making some moves. This is hard to talk about while you're making this list. Garrett Bradbury was re-signed. Kirk Cousins, they converted his contract to make more salary cap space.
I really like the Bradbury move. He was excellent last year.
Dalvin Tomlinson is no longer here. Odell Beckham is a free agent. That's a thing. Let's see here. Multitasking.
It's actually kind of hard. It's actually kind of hard to make this list.
Yeah, this is probably something we should have done prior, but let's just do top 5.
Yeah.
All right.
I know top 5. That's what I've been doing, but I can't even because I don't know if I should put like Noel in here.
Well, he does like him.
Yeah.
All right, I made my top 5.
I'm on 5 right now. Huh. All right, I guess I'll. I don't even know if this is right, but
well, it's just from our perspective.
I know
who he gloats the most about.
Yep. All right, number 5, I have Jaden. Who's your number 5?
Cat.
Okay.
Number 4, I have J-Mac.
Number 4, I have Ant.
We can disagree. Ant said Finchie's is the biggest sack.
I know. That was a great picture, by the way. I was thinking about reposting that picture on my story.
Number 3, newcomer Mike Conley.
Number 3, I have Noel.
I just left Jalen off this list. He didn't deserve to be on this list.
Yeah, I know. I wish.
I don't know how much Finch likes him as much as I think Finch just feels like he's important because he's always felt like the bench needs that scoring. And let's be honest, Jalen can bring the scoring, and at times he is miserable. I have Ant at number 2. I think Finch loves Ant. He coaches him the hardest. People talk about how Ant is very coachable, and Finch is not afraid to yell at Ant in practice sometimes, and I respect that.
Yeah, like I said, this list is probably wrong for me. So,
I'm not saying I'm right.
Look, I agree. His favorite player on the team is probably Ant. If you were to ask him, obviously, like deep down, obviously it's probably Ant. But at number 2, I put Rudy.
I had Rudy's not in my top 5.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think there's been times, especially early in the season, where Finch was pretty underwhelmed by Rudy's defense.
Okay.
I have Kyle at number 1.
Same.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. He just talks
The
about
way
him.
he talks about him is
He
just
just loves him.
yeah.
I
like your list better than mine.
Who do you think he likes the least on the team? Any player on the roster.
Probably Nate Knight.
It's probably a good answer.
I don't know though, but he actually doesn't talk about Jaden that much. So I don't even know why I put Jaden.
That's why I didn't put Jaden on. I swear to God, I've never heard Finch gloat about Jaden just out of random. The guys Finch likes, he'll bring them up out of nowhere and just start talking about him in a positive way. And he does that with Kyle.
He doesn't really do that about Ant that much. But
yeah,
like I said,
you're probably right.
Ant's different though, because if you were to actually ask him, he'd probably say, I mean, yeah, this guy is like the only way I'm gonna have a head coaching job for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Well, that was a good exercise.
Yeah, definitely.
Celtics lost to the Rockets last night.
Not good.
You're a bit worried, but I think you can look at it in a positive way. Celtics have not been playing great lately, and they're beatable. The player I'm most afraid of is Al Horford.
Oh,
I'm just envisioning threes from
everything.
Al Horford.
He hits everything. It's insane.
I want Marcus Smart shooting.
But of course, he'll probably get hot against us finally.
Yeah.
Why are we always the get right game for these teams? Every single time.
There's a lot of teams that probably feel that way.
I know.
But it'll be a good. I hope it's a good game. I always feel like when we're at home, we can win games. No matter who we're playing, we got a chance.
Remember the 76ers game?
Yeah, I felt like we could win. I had more confidence in the Sixers than the Nets. Should have beat the Nets. Yeah. But it's just like those teams that just might not have star players, but they're just good teams. Nets fall in that category. Wizards to a lesser extent, in my opinion. But the Sixers have Joel Embiid and James Harden. Even though Harden didn't play, the players are going to get up for that. They were just way better. But the Celtics, the Wolves will get up for.
Oh, I'm just scared. This is the type of game that the Wolves lose. The dominant. Well, I mean, even though they're not playing very dominant, but the widely seen as best teams in the league come, and we just never beat them ever.
Beat the sack on the road.
And what do you think about my text last night about saying that I'd rather have Ant's jump shot really be working against a team with better defense at the rim versus the Hawks, where they can let up drives, or the Mavericks, they're not very good in the paint, versus the Lakers or the Celtics, who are probably worse in the perimeter, which is where you need to settle and hit threes.
So you would prefer Ant's jump shot to be on?
Yes.
Than him just be able to drive?
Against certain teams, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with his jump shot is sometimes he gets a little step back heavy.
No, but yesterday, the open looks that he's missing that he normally hits.
I don't think there's anything better than the games where he can just go downhill and do whatever.
No, I totally agree. But I'm saying when he doesn't have the jump shot for that night, and it's on a team that's really good in the paint, and it doesn't give up drives easily, that's the worst situation.
Well, that's worst case scenario.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So I'd rather have him be able to hit his jump shot against teams that are better in the paint.
Speaking of Anthony Edwards, after last night's game, it's the first time this season where maybe I'm wrong. He's 0.1 away from averaging 25.
He's been there before.
I don't think he has.
Yeah, he has. He was there
Maybe after
before the
like 10
Warriors
games
game.
last year.
No. Before the Warriors game, where he had his worst game of the season, where he only had 12 points or whatever, he was at 25.
All right. Well, I guess I didn't realize that. But, another thing. A grievance. Can he just make his free throws?
Oh my gosh. I was just about to get there.
I can't. It's just like he'll go 10 for 10 in a game.
It's so weird.
Then
and
he'll
then he'll
go
go 6 for 10.
6 for 10. It's just like you're leaving points on the board.
It's so weird.
We're complaining about these foul calls, and then you get to the line finally, and then you don't fricking make them.
I'm really happy how much he was getting to the line yesterday. And Grady made a great point. He said he's averaging 25 off of pretty little free throw attempts.
Yeah.
What's stopping him when he finally gets that all-star whistle that he deserves to averaging 30?
That's the next step in his career. And I've said this a million times. There is an art to drawing fouls. And
but Grady also made a good point. He said he's not a flop type of guy. He doesn't flop. But you don't need to do that, though. You don't need to flop.
But it'll help. It would help.
Yeah.
There's a way to do it. Like James Harden has graduated from Flop University, and so has Trae Young.
First in his class. James Harden.
Joel Embiid. Ant is in kindergarten when it comes to that. He has one mindset when he's going downhill, and that's just jump into the guy. And that's not a way to drop fouls.
He still should be getting some of these calls, though.
Yeah, I think a lot of times they aren't fouls, though. Like that in the NBA, in terms of how they call fouls, you could go under somebody's arm and have the stupidest thing ever, and that's a foul. Or you could jump into somebody running full speed. If their arms are just like this, that's not a foul. Yeah. As hard as you hit him. And he does that all the time. And again,
this is another one of those things where it's like perimeter defense. This is like a problem, like such a good problem to have. Like some things we can critique are like, oh, he doesn't know how to draw fouls yet. Like that's such a good thing.
Yeah.
Like to work on. Like that's nothing. You can easily achieve that. It's not like, oh, I don't know. It's kind of not like a Jaden situation where it's like, man, I don't know if he can ever become that elite scorer. Like that's asking a lot. His is he needs to pay more attention off ball. He needs to do a better job at drawing fouls. Like those are his.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Ant's got a couple. He's already this good, and he's got plenty of things he can get better at, which is good. Last thing.
Go ahead.
I was going to say last thing is from last night's game. The Wolves clearly exploiting the Hawks putting Trae Young on Jaden McDaniels to start the game. Brilliant.
Really good game from him.
Brilliant. That's probably a lot on Chris Finch. Probably Mike Conley saw it. Jaden saw it.
But anybody can figure that out.
Right.
He's a bad defender.
There's teams that are phenomenal at exploiting poor matchups. The Wolves don't do it that often. They just sort of run the same offense. But last night, they clearly were going to Jaden early, and that was good to see.
Mm-hmm. One more thing from me.
Sure.
A couple of those just phenomenal Anthony Edwards dunks last night. I love that type of offense where you get it to the center, like in the middle of the floor, and he runs, like he cuts through, and you give a little pass to him, and it's easy look. We should do that more often.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a reason they don't. I saw a tweet that the Hawks don't switch much, and that's what's been hurting Ant a lot lately is teams that switch a lot. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. I don't know. I'm not that nose deep in basketball 101, but those are good plays. Luka did it once and Rudy did it once.
Yeah.
Little dribble
Very
hand
fun
out.
to watch.
Ant flying through the air. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's good enough. I mean, we talked about Cat, talked about last night's game, previewed tomorrow night's game. This is the first time they've had a full game on the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
So
plus the tiebreaker.
I wouldn't call it breathing room, but little breathing room.
I mean, it is in the sense that we have the Celtics. So it's like
And
Okay.
the Mavs have the Spurs. So this could last one day, but it's kind of nice. And the Grizzlies are now a game up on the Kings for the 2 seed. So
Either one's fine with me.
yeah, and I am pretty confident. Well, I shouldn't say pretty confident, but I would not be surprised if Ja Morant doesn't play the rest of the year.
Yeah.
He's doing this thing in Florida now. Like, that's probably a pretty big deal. He's going to Florida.
Yeah. It seems like this is a retreat.
Yeah.
Like this is somewhere where you're gonna stay for a while, but who knows?
And the NBA is still doing some investigations, but I feel bad for Grizzlies fans, sort of. Like, imagine if Ant just did something and he's just not playing the rest of the year. That'd suck.
That'd be horrible.
Especially when you're the 2 seed.
Yeah, that'd be horrible.
Like
yeah,
damn.
definitely.
But
let's hope that never happens.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I do feel bad for those fans.
Yeah. I don't necessarily feel that bad for Ja because he did it to himself, but clearly he had some issues. So I'm happy he's getting them fixed.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, everybody follow the JT Sports Show account. We'll be back at some point. I'm not sure when. Never know when, but it just sometimes you just got to record a podcast.
Hey, maybe we should start doing episodes after every single game.
Like night of?
No, like day after.
Okay.
Well, also to the audience, if we make it to the playoffs, hopefully we do, we will be doing the live shows.
And you know what? We might just have to do them together live.
Well, we were doing that before.
No, I mean, like, you're right. You were. And Chuck was on them too, right? Sometimes.
I think for a couple, but like after the games, we do the live stream.
The issue is it'll be later this time because this year I will be at the playoff games, as will you be.
Yeah. I thought you meant like later in the night because if we play Sacramento, that'll be a 9:00 start. Probably won't get over till midnight.
Yeah, those would be late. But after playoff games, I can't fall asleep anyways.
Well, I'm not entirely like proud to admit this, but I was at Game 3 of last year, and we still did a live show after that. So I don't know how late it was.
No, win or loss, we're here. I remember after that blown game, or maybe it was after every loss, I just basically become speechless.
Yeah. Well, let's just hope we get there. I hope we are able to do this because it'll be fun.
If we don't, major disappointment.
Yeah. Well,
we should. And if there was any way we could ever play the Lakers in a playoff series, I'd get it alive. Yeah, I'm just saying, like we win first round, Lakers win first round. If there's a way,
but we still wouldn't play each other.
I don't know how the seeding works.
Well, but this is how it works.
If they beat the Nuggets,
say we beat the Kings 2-7. We beat the Kings, and the Lakers beat the Nuggets. That'd be
7 seed. The winner of the 2-7 and plays the winner of the 3-6. That's how it is.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because last year Grizzlies beat us. Warriors were the 3 seed. They beat the Nuggets.
Oh, no way.
6. So
that's interesting.
If we can be the 6 seed, Nuggets or the Lakers can somehow find their way up to the 7 seed, which is possible because the Mavs suck.
Yeah.
If there's a world where that could happen, both win first round. The D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley versus Anthony Edwards.
I don't want that to happen.
I'd love it.
Well, I want us to make it to the second round, and I think we'd beat them in the second round, and then we go to the conference final. But
imagine this season of all seasons, like just horrible vibes all year, and then all year. Well, most of the year. There's always been this whole year. There's been a cloud of depression.
I think the bad vibes were all summer, all of training camp, and the first, I don't know, roughly.
Don't kid yourself.
I'm not kidding myself.
After every loss, you're like, this is
no. I know that, but that doesn't mean the vibes are terrible.
Well, in terms of the team, like locker room, the team has been pretty good vibes all year, to be honest, besides like 2 weeks during that Pistons loss time. But like other than that, in terms of like fandom, like we made
Oh,
that
yeah.
trade and it's been pretty there's been a cloud of depression over that trade and never having picks ever again, basically. But if
Well,
they
I just
somehow
yeah, yeah.
they beat the Kings or beat the Grizzlies, and
And
then somehow like
yeah,
the lower seed upsets the higher seed, you
yeah.
face them.
Well, let me say this. Connolly and company need to absolutely nail the first round pick in 2024, whatever that pick is.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's in the mid to late 20s. They need to nail it. And
Yeah.
then in 2026, they need to do it again.
Well, he has a good track record. That's good. And you know what? Josh Minot,
Oh yeah.
I would be surprised if he's not a very good player.
Yeah.
He is freaking good.
I like what I'm seeing. It's
He is
exciting.
might be better than Jared Vanderbilt in 2
I hope
years.
so. I
I
hope
wouldn't
so.
be surprised because he can like shoot it a little bit.
Well, I'm very curious to see what he'll be like as a defender. If he can be a really good defender, this is great stuff because I think he can develop that 3-point shot.
Yeah, like Vando was never putting up 37 in a G League game.
No, good point.
That wasn't happening. And
Good point.
and Minot is that, and I can already tell he's going to be that Vando type energy player
Good,
with a
good,
little more offensive firepower.
good. Will
So
he see minutes next year?
I would be surprised if he doesn't.
But over who though? Nikhil?
Well, we don't know what the hell this roster is going to look like
Yeah,
next year
I know. That's a discussion for another day right there.
in 6 months. All right. Everybody follow the JT Sports Show on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I've been trying to do more TikToks lately. And besides that, we'll be back possibly after the Celtics game on Thursday to talk about whatever happens at Target Center, because that's a big game. And we could be 2 games up. It could be a game and a half up. We could be tied with the Dallas Mavericks, but the Mavericks are sucking. So thanks everybody for listening. But other than that, we go.